So in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to paint a portrait using ink. So I've got my model set up, my wife, who's kindly agreed to sit for this portrait. And I'm going to be starting by first figuring out the general composition. Where does she sit within my page? Where's the top of her head going to go? And where's the bottom of the head going to go? And once I figure out a few of these basic marks, then I can kind of dive in to paint the rest of the portrait. So I'm working with ink that's been watered down some, so it's not too dark. So if I make mistakes, it's very easy for me to paint over it. I'm not using any pencil because I don't want that to show through later. This is not about being exact. I'm not going to judge or critique these based on them looking just like the person you're trying to paint. This is about trying to activate a full composition, making the whole page interesting, painting with interesting marks and stylization. So it's really about making a dynamic painting, not something that's perfectly representational. If you can make it look like them, that's great. That's bonus points, or not point, but bonus for you, but won't be counted against you if you can't. So I'm just starting out with some watered down paint, and I think I want the top of her head to sit right about here, just about an inch or so below the top of the canvas or the paper. And if that's going to go there, I probably want her head to be just about there, so the bottom of the chin will sit right about here. So, I'm not making a tiny little head on a big canvas. I want her head to take up at least 50% of the page. Otherwise, I'm never going to be able to activate this full page. So if those two things are going there, I know the head's this wide, then I can see that her head is about half to 2/3 about as wide as it is tall, not really counting the hair. If I'm looking at her hair too, they're maybe about equal. So I think the front of her cheek, she's in 3/4 profile, I think the front of her cheek is going to probably go about there, and it sits just about midway up her face. And now I can kind of start figuring out where everything else is. I think the side of her other cheek is going to sit about here. And I might be wrong. I might change these things. I think I already have changed them. That mark. Her ear sits right next to it there. And then the back of her hair is going to come down right about there. The cranium is very kind of spherical, right? The top part of the head. So I'm just going to kind of mark the curvatures of that. Her hair is going to kind of come over about here. It's coming down a little bit in front of her cheek or her forehead. I might bring that up a little bit later on. I think her nose, I want to figure out right about where the bottom of the nose is. It usually sits about halfway up the face. There we go, somewhere about there. It's just like a little mark to kind of tell me where that's going to go. Keep it real light because I know I'm going to paint over it. Her lips are going to sit just about halfway between the nose and the bottom of her chin. So I'm just going to kind of mark that in real lightly. And her eyes, they say are sitting about 2/3 up there. So I can kind of use these sort of relative measurements. The eyes are also at halfway between the bottom of the nose and the top of the forehead. So these sort of relative proportions that you can use on the face to help you kind of figure out where everything is going to sit. And once I've got those things going, I can sort of start connecting the parts. So the cheek's going to come around like so. And I don't mean you have to connect every single line, but just sort of gracefully figure out where the contours of the face are. Right, the brow kind of comes in like so. Just a little bit, and then pops up here to make her forehead. And I like just kind of making sort of these sort of graceful, fluid movements as much as possible. See, the chin's going to come down like so, and the hair comes around. Now I can see where it's going to come in about relationship to the face. It just about meets her eyebrows. If I get something a little thick, you can't really wipe it out. It's there. So I'm just going to be going a little darker, more definite as I go. So let's take care of the eyes next before I take care of the lips. So she has really big eyes. So they are like so. I usually get the lashes first, then the pupil, or the iris sits right in there. It's covered up by part of the lashes, so if it doesn't do that, if it's just kind of surrounded entirely by the white of the eye, the person tends to look really surprised. So lashes first. Let's figure out where the hairline goes. She's got this really nice sweep of her hair. It comes across there. And comes down a little bit there. And then the nose, bottom of the nose, often lines up to the bottom of the ear. And the top of the ear usually comes up to just somewhere around the brow line. But I don't see it because it's covered up by your hair. So I just want to get that to... There we go. And now we really start seeing the face start coming together. She's got a bit of a smile. Normally, the corners of the lips line up with the pupil. But with a smile, it might come out a little bit further. It actually isn't in her case, but that's just something to pay attention to, is where do the corners of the mouth relate to the pupil, and that can help you figure out where those things go. Let's see. There, and then the bottom, that little point, and the top lip usually comes down right below the nose. And the top lip's going to be in a little more shadow than the bottom lip. She's pretty... I'm trying to go with really kind of long, sinuous strokes. I shouldn't be getting into this much detail at this point. Don't do what I'm doing. You're going to want to pay attention to where the rest of the body is too before you get into all those dark marks. We might still choose to comb back and change things. So I can see that her neck comes down from right about the middle of her chin. And it's going to come down a little bit longer than where her face is tall. I made a few splashes there. That's fine. I might make a few more splashes on purpose then. Maybe just make that part of the stylized part of the painting. Then I can see her shoulder is going to come out just a little bit in front of her face. Just like so. Usually one of the darkest parts of the face is the line between the lips. And the pupils and nostril are some of the other darkest parts. I'm not going to paint in all these details on the face. I find that they tend to age a person, make them look older than they are. So these sort of lines that kind of connect the nose to the mouth, I just leave those alone usually, or I keep them a little more subtle than they might be in real life. And like I said, I don't want to leave this part empty. I want to activate that space back there. So I'm going to use some of these kind of paint splatters that are on the wall to kind of activate that area and make it kind of equally interesting. Otherwise, her gaze is just shooting us off the page, so I think some of these marks might kind of stop some of that motion. There we go. I might come in with a small brush and kind of darken in a few parts, but that's largely the how to do it, right? So your painting shouldn't take too long. I don't want you to spend more than like 15 to 30 minutes on this. If you don't get something right or it just turns into a disaster, don't worry about correcting it too much. Just start a new one. Don't take forever on these things, okay? It's all about quick movements and being expressive with your marks.